What if, at some random moment tonight, your brain simply forgot how to breathe? Not because the air disappeared, not because your lungs stopped working, but because the control center in your brain quietly stopped sending the signal that tells your body to inhale. It sounds impossible, almost absurd, because breathing feels automatic, effortless, something we never have to think about. In fact, most of us go through entire days without noticing a single breath. But here's the unsettling truth. Every breath you've ever taken happened because a tiny part of your brain allowed it to happen. And if that part of your brain suddenly failed, your lungs wouldn't know what to do next. They would just wait for a command that never arrives. So what would actually happen if your brain truly forgot how to breathe? Would you notice immediately? Would your body panic and restart itself? Or could something far more disturbing begin to unfold without you even realizing it? Right now, as you're listening to this, your brain has already triggered several breaths automatically. You didn't ask for them. You didn't plan them. Your body simply did it. But the real mystery is where that command comes from. Deep inside your head, hidden beneath the larger thinking parts of your brain, sits a small structure known as the brainstem. Inside the brainstem is an even smaller region called the medulla oblongata, a piece of neural machinery so important that without it, life would stop within minutes. This tiny structure runs one of the most critical programs in your entire body, the breathing rhythm. About every few seconds, specialized neurons inside the medulla fire electrical signals down your spinal cord. Those signals reach the muscles that control your diaphragm and chest. The diaphragm contracts, your lungs expand. Air rushes in. Then the signal stops. The diaphragm relaxes. Air flows out. This rhythm repeats again and again about 20,000 times every single day, silently keeping you alive whether you're awake, asleep, laughing, running, or completely unconscious. But here's the question most people never ask. What if that rhythm suddenly stopped? Imagine you're asleep late at night. Your room is quiet. Your heart is beating steadily. Your lungs are healthy. The air around you is full of oxygen. Everything seems perfectly normal, but deep inside your brainstem, something changes. The neurons responsible for breathing pause for a moment, then another moment, and suddenly the signal that normally tells your body to inhale doesn't come. Your chest stays still. Your lungs wait. Seconds pass. 10 seconds, 15, 20. And the strangest part is that you wouldn't even realize it was happening. Because breathing, when it's automatic, happens entirely outside your conscious awareness. Yet this scenario isn't just a thought experiment. There are real medical conditions where the brain temporarily forgets to breathe. One of the most fascinating and frightening examples is something called central sleep apnea. In this condition, the brain occasionally stops sending breathing signals while a person sleeps. Unlike obstructive sleep apnea, where the airway becomes blocked, here the lungs are perfectly capable of breathing. The airway is open, the oxygen is available, but the brain simply fails to deliver the command. For several seconds, sometimes longer, breathing stops completely. Oxygen levels slowly begin to fall while carbon dioxide quietly rises inside the bloodstream. Eventually, the brain detects the imbalance and triggers a sudden micro-awakening, just enough to restart breathing again. The person may never even remember waking up, but this cycle can repeat dozens or even hundreds of times during a single night. And that raises a chilling question. What if the brain never sent that restart signal? To understand why breathing normally restarts automatically, we need to talk about something most people misunderstand about breathing itself. Many people assume we breathe because the body needs oxygen. Oxygen is important, of course, but the real trigger that forces your brain to breathe is actually carbon dioxide. Every time your cells produce energy, they create carbon dioxide as a waste product. That gas dissolves in your blood and slowly begins to build up. Your brain constantly monitors this level using special sensors called chemoreceptors. When carbon dioxide rises too high, your brain sends an urgent signal to breathe. That breath flushes out the excess carbon dioxide and brings fresh oxygen back into your system. It's a beautifully balanced feedback loop that operates every second of your life. But if the brain loses its ability to monitor carbon dioxide or send the breathing signal, that entire system collapses. At first, the changes might be subtle. Carbon dioxide levels rise slowly, making the blood slightly more acidic. Your body begins to feel restless and uncomfortable. Your heart rate may increase as your system tries to compensate. Within a minute or two, oxygen levels begin to fall. Brain cells are extremely sensitive to oxygen deprivation, and as oxygen drops, those cells begin malfunctioning. Vision becomes blurry. Awareness fades, confusion sets in. If oxygen deprivation continues for several minutes, permanent brain damage can begin. And yet, incredibly, there are people who live with a condition where their brain literally forgets how to breathe during sleep every single night. It's called congenital central hypoventilation syndrome, sometimes known by the haunting nickname Ondine's curse. People born with this condition have a malfunction in the automatic breathing control system. When they are awake, they can consciously control their breathing just like anyone else. But when they fall asleep, the automatic breathing system that most of us rely on completely shuts down. Without external help, their bodies simply stop breathing during sleep. Many patients must rely on ventilators or specialized breathing devices to survive the night. Imagine living with the knowledge that falling asleep could become dangerous unless a machine breathes for you. This rare disorder reveals something deeply unsettling about the human body. Automatic breathing is not guaranteed. It's a neurological process that must run continuously without interruption, and it can be disrupted in other ways too. Brainstem strokes, traumatic brain injuries, certain neurological diseases, and powerful drug overdoses can all damage the neural circuits that control breathing. When doctors encounter patients whose brains can no longer maintain breathing, they often use mechanical ventilators to take over the process. These machines push air into the lungs and pull it back out, essentially replacing the brain's breathing command. In those moments, survival depends entirely on technology doing the job the brain once performed effortlessly. But here's something even more fascinating about the breathing system. Your brain actually runs two different breathing programs at the same time. The first system is automatic, handled by the brainstem. The second system is voluntary, controlled by higher brain regions responsible for conscious thought. That's why you can intentionally take a deep breath before diving underwater, slow your breathing during meditation, or hold your breath for a short time. Your conscious brain temporarily overrides the automatic breathing rhythm. But no matter how strong your willpower is, the automatic system always wins eventually. If you try to hold your breath long enough, carbon dioxide levels in your blood rise so high that the brain forces you to breathe again. It overrides your decision and reactivates the breathing muscles. This built-in survival mechanism ensures that even if you try to stop breathing, your brain will eventually take control again. Unless, of course, the automatic system itself has stopped working. If the brainstem breathing circuits fail completely, conscious breathing can only keep you alive for a limited time. Eventually, fatigue, distraction, sleep, or unconsciousness takes over, and without the automatic breathing signal, the body cannot sustain itself. Scientists studying these breathing circuits have discovered that the rhythm of breathing is generated by a specialized network of neurons often referred to as a biological pacemaker. These neurons fire in carefully timed patterns that create the inhale-exhale rhythm. Some neurons trigger inhalation, others control exhalation, and others monitor oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in the blood. Together, they form one of the most important life support systems in the entire human body. In fact, the moment a newborn baby takes its first breath after birth, this exact neural network activates and begins running continuously. From that first breath onward, the breathing rhythm rarely stops for the rest of a person's life. It continues while you sleep, while you dream, while you're sick, while you're unconscious, and even while you're completely unaware of it happening. By the time you reach adulthood, your brain may have already triggered hundreds of millions of breaths without you noticing a single one. But this constant rhythm also hides a fragile truth. Breathing feels automatic because the system is incredibly reliable, yet it still depends on tiny clusters of neurons deep inside the brainstem. If those neurons stop functioning, the lungs themselves cannot start breathing on their own. They are waiting for instructions, and without that command, the muscles responsible for breathing remain still. So what would truly happen if your brain forgot how to breathe? The answer is surprisingly simple and deeply unsettling. Your lungs would still be capable of breathing. The air around you would still contain oxygen. But without the brain's signal, your diaphragm would not contract. Your chest would not expand. Air would not move in or out. Oxygen levels would slowly drop while carbon dioxide rises. Consciousness would fade as brain cells begin struggling to survive without oxygen. Within minutes, the brain itself would begin shutting down. In other words, the cause wouldn't be damaged lungs or lack of air. The cause would simply be that the control system stopped giving instructions. And the most fascinating part of this entire story is that while you've been listening to this explanation, your brain has quietly continued its job without asking for your attention. It has triggered breath after breath after breath while you focused on something completely different. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. A silent rhythm happening thousands of times a day, millions of times a year. A process so automatic that most people never notice it at all. But now that you've thought about it, you might suddenly become aware of the next breath you take, and the next one after that. The strange thing is, once you notice your breathing, you briefly take control of it yourself. You might inhale a little deeper, maybe slow it down slightly. For a moment, you're the one running the system, but eventually your attention drifts away again, and when it does, your brain quietly takes the job back, continuing the rhythm that keeps you alive every second of your life. Which leads to one final, unsettling thought. If breathing is something your brain has been managing silently since the day you were born, how many breaths have happened without you ever noticing them? And what would the world feel like if, just once, that silent system suddenly stopped?